Welcome to today's Society for Scholarly Publishing webinar. My name is Maria Preston Cargill, Publishing and Ad Sales Manager here at Allen Press, and I will be your moderator today. So our session is called Digital Revenue, Innovation and Scholarly Publishing, Expanding Industry-Related Revenue Opportunities in the Digital Arena. And this morning, we're pleased to have three professionals with us as panelists. They are all strategically using digital media in some way to either enhance or grow revenues in each of their respective spaces. So a little bit about how today's session will work. First, we're going to hear from our panelists, and then we will have time for a Q&A period after that. You are welcome to submit questions at any time during the presentation via the chat box, which hopefully you all have access to. And if you do submit a question, please select the organizer and panelist as the recipient of your question, and then we'll address those after we hear from our speakers. So our first presenter today is Damon Bosch. Damon is the Executive Director for Strategic Engagement at Practice Fusion. And what Damon's going to take us through is kind of an overview of just how much impact digital media has had within the industry as a whole, and the diversity of digital media outlets, how they've proliferated so frequently. Next, we're going to hear from Jennifer Badua. Jennifer is the Director for Business Development at the Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery, and Jennifer is going to give us a case study showing how that journal's digital media assets were evaluated and what strategies were used to kind of create some new digital revenue streams. Now, finally, we're going to hear from Amy Clark Luxinger. Amy is the Director of Corporate Sales at Oxford University Press, and Amy is going to discuss challenges of working with societies to develop digital revenue strategies. So scholarly publishers today, as I mentioned earlier, we're all so aware of the increasing impact of digital media in our space, and of course the number of digital outlets continues to increase. Damon, since you're our first presenter today, and given your perspective as someone who has history on both the commercial side and the scholarly publishing side of this whole equation, what are you seeing in the marketplace right now?
Thanks, Maria, and thank you all for joining. Well, we'll talk about that. I guess the first question that you might be asking is why a guy from an electronic health record company is a panelist in an SSP-sponsored webinar. And part of the reason for that is that I spent the past 15 years or so working for publishers like Wolters Kluwer and consulting societies like the AMA, American Psychiatric Publishers, etc. So I've been working and been a digital stakeholder within scholarly publishing for quite some time, particularly focused on digital promotional sales and marketing with a strong emphasis on advertising. So I will be coming at this to some extent more from the medical publishing perspective than, say, science and technology, but I think kind of the rules and best practices will apply either way. The other reason is that this group felt it was worthwhile and important to provide insight regarding the abundance of the aggressive commercial entities with really sophisticated promotional messaging products that are being sold to the same clients that you're targeting, i.e. pharma and device brands, et cetera, depending upon where you are if you're medical, science, technology. So we're going to take a look at all of that. And as for the first scary slide, admittedly, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but from the macro perspective, we're one and all in this rather leaky ship as it relates to some of the market variables and the trends around the promotional dollars that we're all getting from the usual suspects. In the past 5 years, ad spending in professional healthcare markets has dropped over $1 billion. 8 out of the top 10 selling drugs are now off patent or scheduled to be by 2016. Generic substitution rates are through the roof. Drug pipelines are more robust for niche and specialized drugs in areas like oncology as opposed to broad primary care diseases. And lastly, payers like Medicaid are exerting more control over the drug decision process, making professional marketing less impactful overall. So why is it then that there's such inertia in the for-profit commercial sector with companies whose business models rely almost exclusively on promotional revenues from industry? And from my perspective, the answer to that question is that despite the apparently discouraging news about the pipelines and all of the explorations and the negative market factors, there are substantial digital revenues that are flowing and growing to those who own the requisite behavioral and demographic data for their physician or HCP users, who leverage it to target those audiences, and finally, who prove ROI. So, we all know companies like Medscape that can still readily generate mid-six-figure and seven-figure deals for less than blockbuster brands. But this onslaught of new companies intends to displace them and you that much more. So maybe you've heard of some of these companies. It's a tiny representative list, and I imagine most, if not all of you, have heard of some of the big ones here. But there are accelerators and incubators like Rock Health or Blueprint Health and Startup Health that are mentoring and or launching scores of startups whose sole intention is to bridge promotional stakeholders digitally and directly to physicians and HCPs and their patients with a precision and a knowledge and an intimacy that's never been seen before. So established companies like Medscape and the like are probably taking anywhere from 70 to 90 cents on the dollar of the overall professional targeted digital spend. EMR companies like mine, Practice Fusion, are starting to compliantly leverage enormous amounts of data for targeted promotional marketing and HCP business intelligence. All of these companies are connecting patients to doctors through appointments, patient health records, social and other feedback loop products, doctors to other doctors through EMR, social, gamification, market research platforms. They're providing clinical decision tools and resources that are designed to be immediately relevant to the clinical errand, and even research and academic content that's leveraged within the practice workflow at the point of care. So these types of companies, again, this is a very small representative list, will continue to threaten to disintermediate traditional scholarly publishers. So even though they're a little bit different than you, we should still be looking closely at their best practices. So the result of this rather eye-opening confluence of industry events and competitive escalation is that physicians and healthcare practitioners are being databased, profiled, segmented, detailed, measured within an inch of their lives, and in more ways than ever, thanks to the intimacy that we have with digital products. What is their specialty? What does their practice look like? How are they diagnosing and writing versus their peers and other specialties? What are their behavioral attributes beyond diagnosis and script? Can we reach them at specific points in the workflow with different types of messaging, again, that's most relevant to their clinical errand? Can we match a list that's been expensively groomed and built by industry? Can physician-level data be reported back to the commercial partner? Can market share and RX lift impact be measured in real time and tied back tactically to individual promotional campaigns? Again, I know most scholarly publishers can and wouldn't do this even if they could, but it's important to know what's out there and what the expectations are. Can we measure pull-through to a call center or deep pharma website penetration, a conversion of a visitor and attribution back to the original marketing tactic? So more often than not, there's a massive chasm between the perceived best practices of these commercial digital players stealing your dollars and a scholarly publisher. So with these companies, promotional revenues are the key business driver, while a typical scholarly publisher has other interests to protect, including serving a membership who see their benefit of membership to not include promotional messaging, or may bristle at having to provide an email, let alone demographic information, let alone deep profiling and targeting. So an aggressive promotional decision by a publisher can actually affect impact factor as well as other revenue streams like membership, individual and institutional subscriptions, etc. So, and furthermore, chances are senior leadership within your society have a more academic rather than business background, making the cultural challenges that much harder. But my esteemed peers here can speak a little bit better to that than I can. Ultimately, by understanding physician behavior, you can reach them in a myriad of very efficient ways with the right environment, the right message at the right time in their consideration cycle. But increasingly, because of all the market factors that I alluded to in the previous slides, that's what promotional partners expect, and publishers are having a hard time meeting that expectation. So this is a look at Practice Fusion. There's only so much of the secret sauce, so to speak, with Practice Fusion that I can share. A lot of it is proprietary, but it's relevant to this discussion to note how we tie into this new promotional paradigm. We're what we call a single source multi-tenant EMR, and what I mean by that is that we're cloud-based, and every one of the 40 million plus patient records on our platform can be accessed by us and leveraged by our marketing and our research clients in a fully HIPAA and pharma compliant way. There's no PII anywhere in what we do in terms of the promotional programs or the research that we provide. So specialty, geography, patient biometrics, prior diagnoses and RX, insurance information, immunization and allergy history, smoker, non-smoker, unstructured data, like the free text from the SOAP notes written by the physician. Brand copay or rebate messaging is one of the hottest and admittedly most controversial tactics right now, and EMR is the ideal environment given the specificity of the audience and the targeting capabilities. So while we think that we have the best product scale and track record within EHR, there are over 400 EHR companies, some would even say 1,000 out there, and many of them are angling for the same promotional dollars that you, the publishers, are, and that speaks to the emerging model of all these new types of companies trying to disintermediate scholarly publishers. So I'm sorry if that sounds doom and gloom. I didn't mean for it to be, but one of the things that you can try to do to level the playing field is to mind the gap. And the gap that I'm referring to is the way that you report the impact of a campaign, first the way an agency measures a campaign, and finally the way the manufacturer does. The more you rely upon the planning and the buy-side stakeholders in the media equation or promotional buying equation to determine the efficacy of a campaign, the more you allow them to either lose sight of your unique value proposition or mold your results into a likely square peg and round hole methodology, or you compare you to competitors in an unflattering light. So the whole hot potato image there, you want the hot potato. You want to be able to control the messaging as it relates to the performance of the campaigns that you do. In the case of scholarly publishing, there used to be a different standard for performance. The promotional partnership was often based on the badge effect of associating the partner's brand with yours because of your impact factor, your reputation, and other non-ROI driven factors. Promotional partners were there because it was too conspicuous for them not to be. But as budgets decreased due to smaller and more targeted brands in the marketplace, the do more with less and prove it paradigm is pushing you more and more out of the equation. Small betas and pilots, micro measurement, and hard ROI ratio is driving the front-end promotional sales pitch and the resultant campaign evaluation. If a program works with one brand, chances are, again, I'm focusing on pharma here, there are centralized digital marketing drivers on the buy side who will look to leverage those tactics across all brands for substantial dollars. And that usually happens after a very rigorous and multi-month MSA process. And that's usually when the floodgates open. Most anything prior to that will be tiny compared to the vendors who have achieved that vetted and preferred status. And the key to achieving that status is bridging the reporting and ROI gap. So the next question is, how do we do that? There are a lot of different ways, and it's challenging. But from my perspective, it's been by being willing to do small pilots first, to learn and to scale. Promotional partners are usually open to charter or pilot scenarios that make sense, and are even willing to cost and risk share if the upside is there. You just have to prove it. Credible third-party surveys, ad impact studies, control group A/B testing of campaigns, trial bundles of content or inventory or audiences. There has to be a willingness to experiment, sometimes fail, and analyze results in real time as much as you can. So as a summary slide, I do have a few recommendations in terms of some potential next steps. First of all, look at the for-profit sector for best practices. And I use the word best loosely, as I know that they can be a bit too overtly aggressive for the average publisher's taste. But look at their product, their marketing integrations, how are they targeting, what do they seem to know about their audiences, and what do the integrations look like? Do they do web banners and text or resource centers or social? You should be scraping revenue models that seem to work. The second point is to find your organizational ceiling. If I were working at a scholarly publisher and trying to push the ball forward, I would literally punch list everything I'd like to know about my visitors, my membership, my audience, my subscribers, and start with a dream list of what those demographics could be and work from there. And then start internally with the different departments with whatever IT, analytics, membership marketing resources you have to see what you're capable of doing and what could be gotten with minimal to no spend and energy, and then where you could go if you actually had the appropriate resources. And from there you can start to build your story before speaking with editorial and board member stakeholders who probably have a more vested interest, for lack of a better word, in integrity around your audience, and will require convincing and education to allow more promotional intimacy. Related to that is customer insight. Look to your clients, and I see those as both your membership, institutional and individual subscribers, but also your promotional partners to get customer intelligence. Whether it's something really simple like buying a beer or sponsoring a qualitative research project, conversing with your core constituents is critical. CI, or customer insight, will allow you to better understand how membership and subscribers are being targeted now outside of your organization, what they deem acceptable if not outright helpful, how they perceive and value your society, your journal, and more. So this knowledge, for me anyway, it's informed product development, resource allocation, and the inevitable internal selling that has to occur in order to affect change. So, and you'd be surprised how industry will respond with feedback, given the chance to be heard on how they would exploit, and yes, I know that's a very bad word, but exploit your audience and what they see as your value proposition. Number 4, start small. Not every project means moving to a new content management solution, increasing headcount, rejiggering an entire workflow, or adding 10 new responsibilities to somebody's job. Chances are there's something already monetizable standing in your digital ecosystem that could be tinkered with. Analysis paralysis in digital definitely occurs, and frequently, and you don't have to, I hate the expression, but I'll use it, boil the ocean with a huge undertaking or large promotional product launch. If you tinker small and fail small, the learnings from that experience will prepare you to risk big and win big. And then the last part is be social. You all are here today, so you already have a leg up in terms of your willingness to learn and see what's out there, whether it's through SSP or other organizations. Groups like SSP offer the best possible environment for structured education and unstructured social networking. I've seen enormous generosity from publishers in sharing issues and ideas because there's a notion that we're all in this together, and nothing good will come from operating in a vacuum. So those are my comments for today, and I'm certainly willing to answer any questions. With that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Jen Badua and say thank you.
Thanks, Damon. Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Badua. I'm the Director of Business Development here at the Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery, JBJS. In that capacity, I have responsibility for both advertising sales as well as new business ideas and new business models across all of our customer segments. So today, before sort of jumping into the meat of the matter, I thought I'd set the scene for you so that you had sort of a better understanding of where JBJS is coming from in terms of digital revenue. So we are an independent, not-for-profit publisher. That is, we are not society or association published. We are a niche publisher. We're very, very specifically focused on orthopedic surgery. And we're old. We're over 100 years old. You'll hear not quite as old as our next speaker in terms of OUP, but we're getting up there. And this is our building, our headquarters here in Needham, Massachusetts. So today, I wanted to share with you the story of our recent digital transformation so that you could use it potentially as a case study for those of you who are thinking about getting a little bit more aggressive in the digital space, especially as it relates to commercial revenues. So historically, JBJS published a single journal, but in 2010, a new CEO came to town, and he had pretty big ideas. So together with our board, they decided that it was really time to evolve from being in the business of a journal to being in the business with a journal. So on the right, here's a shot of our website in 2010. As you can see, it's a little bit basic. It's not overly user-friendly, and it's a little bit print-focused right down to the cover shot right there in the center of the screen. So we decided it was time really to expand our digital portfolio and to diversify our revenue streams. So all of this in 2010 was happening not coincidentally at the same time as we were seeing some pretty big changes in our advertising and sponsorship market. And let me explain that for us, our advertising and sponsorship market is the device industry, the orthopedic device industry, implantable hips, knees, and not so much the pharmaceutical industry. That's probably about 20% of our business. So we were seeing some changes, and in that we were seeing less consistent budgeting. Gone were the days of fall media plans that would come in so that you'd have a good idea of what was going to come in the next year. So unfortunately, that practice seems to have gone by the wayside. In addition, we are seeing some consolidation, some mergers, which unfortunately have resulted in some budget cuts. So our clients started asking a lot about, what do you have online? What are your offerings online? So they were starting to get a little bit more curious about what we had to offer. Then there was the audience. We started at this point to learn a little bit more about our surgeon reader audience through our market research and some other means, and we were really beginning to hear a consistent story from them about the information overload that they were facing. So all of these things sort of came together around this time in 2010. The new CEO, new goals, changes in our advertising market and changes in our reader market, and all of that is really what led us to our digital transformation. So it was a pretty massive undertaking, especially because we compressed the whole effort into a 6-month time frame, and it took the entire organization. So this slide, quite honestly, is a little bit silly because it represents the entire organization almost, but that really is the message here, is that for an effort like this, you really do have to include everybody. So as a team, we got together and really decided that it was time to take the bull by the horns, to be honest with you, digitally speaking. So for us, that meant making a pretty significant investment in order to get us the tools that we needed to achieve our newly found goals, if you will. So we revamped our main site, jbjs.org. We introduced 2 new online-only products, which are really online-only journals, Case Connector and Surgical Techniques. And we had all of our sites across all 3 of these sites we call our network. We had our entire network semantically tagged. I have to say, I think this is probably the biggest advancement or piece of progress that we've had through this transformation. So essentially, all of our content is related to one another, which creates a much better user experience from the reader perspective. And this also is what led us to this new revenue stream in our advertiser space. We are now able to offer targeted advertising against content, which is something that without semantic tagging, we have not been able to do in the past. So because of these new offerings that we were able to bring to market for our advertisers, we had an increased need for a deeper bench in our online operations business. So if there's honestly just one thing that you all take away from this today, at least from my presentation, it would be that I really can't overemphasize the importance of having a really, really good traffic manager and a really, really good, deep bench in online operations, because this business is extremely complex and it is becoming more and more complex on a daily basis, it seems. So here is a look at the 2 new sites. So on the left, you see Case Connector. On the bottom left, you see Essential Surgical Techniques. On the right is an article-level view of JBJS. So this is our targeted advertising at work. At the top, you see the leaderboard. On the right, circled is a cutoff look at our medium rectangle. Both of those, you can't tell from looking at this, but those are, that is a knee campaign, and this is a knee article. So you're seeing these ads directly targeted against this content, again, without semantic tagging, and in the past, this was never possible. So this is really quite revolutionary for us. So the results have been and continue to be very positive. Again, we're better able to target our content to our readers, improving really the relevance of their experience on our sites. And we're also now able to target for our clients, which, to Damon's point about ROI, really provides them with a better ROI, which we'll get to in just one second. So more specifically on the results of this digital transformation effort, again, more relevant content for readers. And a bonus is that the targeted advertising has been very seamless for our users. That is, no one has complained about the fact that our advertising is actually targeted against the content. And one sort of unexpected and unanticipated benefit to this change has been that we actually have more new client types now than we've had in the past. So we are now reaching beyond just orthopedic device and pharma into new client types, and that's been a real win with this move. So this last bullet, the click-through rate. So I'm not a fan of using the click-through rate as a measurement or a benchmark. with your clients or your advertisers. I don't think it's a fair or really useful exercise, to be honest with you. There are so many other things to measure, but this is a language that we all speak. So I figured for our purposes here today that it would be something that, would demonstrate for you the point, which is our click-through rate on targeted campaigns is 53% higher than our click-through rate on all of our campaigns combined. So that's a data set from January through September of this year, all of our campaigns combined. So I think that probably speaks for itself. This targeting has been a real win for us. So what's next for JBJS in terms of digital innovation and digital revenues? We are always have a close eye on mobile. All of our sites are mobile optimized. So the question is, what do our clients want to do with that? And we are in discussions right now with our clients. We have ideas, and we're sort of in the early phases of development in terms of ideas about what to do with mobile in the client space. We always have our eye on the IAB and any new creative sizes that come out. The IAB certainly has a bit of a commercial slant to it. So there are things in the consumer space that make sense that don't make sense in a space like ours. But there are, learnings to be gleaned for sure and ideas. So we always have an eye on the IAB. So we are also certainly always thinking about the next app. We currently have an iPhone and an iPad app, but we are always thinking what's next. And our clients are certainly always asking about apps. And email. Email is always, we're always trying to collect more names and create more emails that serve both the reader and the advertiser. So I leave you today with just one parting thought, and that's if you're thinking about getting into the digital commercial space more aggressively, and it's in the plans, I would encourage you to do it if you can, sooner than later, and in some way jump into the sandbox, because honestly, if you don't disrupt your own business, I fear someone else will beat you to it. So that is it for me. I'm going to hand it over to Amy at this point, and we'll be happy to take your questions at the end.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, good morning, everyone. I have been at Oxford for about 6 months and came over particularly to run the U.S. sales organization. Prior to Oxford, I was with LWW in sales and business development. So I have a history of working with societies to try to help them evolve their digital commercialization strategy. And it takes a village, as Jen pointed out, when you want to make some strong strategic changes. And that's what we do here at Oxford. I thought, since some of you may not be familiar with Oxford, particularly as a journal publisher, that I'd tell you a little bit about our organization. I have to clarify, the picture here is not Oxford headquarters. That is actually a building known as the Radcliffe Camera, which was built in 1737 and is the first circular library ever built. So it's also the most photographed building in Oxford, for those of you who ever want to go there. As Jen kindly mentioned, we are a publisher that's been in existence since 1478. We don't actually refer to ourselves as old, particularly in a digital conversation. We like to say that we have a lot of experience. We are part of Oxford University and are a nonprofit organization, and we really live to support the mission of the university to promote scholarship worldwide. And in part of doing that, a large percentage of our profits annually are contributed back to the university to fund scholarship. We are the largest university press in the world. We're in 51 countries, 6,000 people, and currently publishing 270 journals, 150 which are society-owned, and we release about 7,000 new book titles annually. As you can see, we really run a large depth and breadth of publishing subjects. We're going to focus today primarily on medicine, since that's where a lot of our digital development is, and that's where we're focusing our society partnerships. But I think it's important to note that every society is different in their adoption of digital practices. You can't say, for example, that all mathematics societies are conservative, because within the mathematical world, you might have some that embrace digital innovation and will get their hands on anything they can possibly, and then others within the same discipline that can't even consider a website. So it's different, and we have to be flexible as we approach different societies and different disciplines. So we customize everything we do based on what they define their needs and goals to be. That said, even though within a discipline you may have real innovators and real slowpokes, generally societies are conservative when it comes to digital revenue generating products. They're very concerned about the placement of advertising next to content. I'm sure you're all well aware of how advertising works in a printed journal, where it's usually sectioned off into one area of the journal and not ever interspersed in between content. So this whole new digital approach where there can be advertising against content is a little scary, but I'm going to talk more about that later. We spend a lot of time with our society partners trying to educate them. You know, they're academicians, they're clinicians, they're not really in the digital world. So it's an educational process as new products and new technologies come to fore that we spend a lot of time actually demonstrating those new technologies. And I make a point there because even though this is a webinar, and webinars are generally very useful to most people, there's nothing like getting in front of someone and actually combing the web, showing the tablet device, actually demonstrating a product and how advertising and sponsorship can work in that particular product. At the end of the day, no matter what, the society says what we do for them. We can have the best ideas in the world and talk about real strong revenue generation, but if the society is not comfortable with that particular way, then we table it. And I will say table it because oftentimes we'll go back 6 months later or perhaps a year later and remind them that we discussed this product, it was rejected for whatever the reason was, but chances are within that 6 months their competition has adopted that practice, so now we can show them what their competition is doing, and that often has great influence over a final decision. So we're flexible, and with each society what we do is develop a customized digital roadmap for them. So we lay out all of the products, we introduce new concepts to them, and as each one is approved, we then bring the next idea to bear and say, you've approved this, the audience responded well, we generated additional revenues for you, now let's consider this. So it's a real strategy, and we implement it only on an agreed-upon timetable between Oxford and the society itself. Right now, Oxford offers a whole bunch of things. This is a small list here. Banner advertising is standard now, so this list isn't very exciting, but where we focus a lot of our efforts with dealing with societies is actually where those advertisements can be placed. Home pages were never a problem. Search results were never a problem. Abstracts was a little scary for a short period of time, and then once advertising was introduced, it wasn't a problem anymore. And where we're focused now, and we're suggesting to many of our societies, to really grow revenues is to put, as Jen has done in her organization, advertising at the article level, so advertising opposite full-text content. We have 2 major European societies who have agreed to this and 3 smaller societies in the U.S. who are already doing it. And I'll repeat this several times, but there has been absolutely no pushback on advertising against full-text content. We also offer online sponsorships, so collections, which are collections of articles usually created by the editorial office rather than the sponsor themselves, because that sort of takes the onus of any sort of perceived influence about a collection of content away from the sponsor if the editor creates the collection. Quick polls, most viewed, downloaded, sponsored microsites. Those seem to be very popular, especially in the UK, where we've got a lot of major pharmaceutical companies who are doing those on our websites. And then apps are in development. The whole tablet or explosion of the iPad has created this tremendous sensation in scholarly publishing. And again, just like the society reference I used earlier, you have some who jumped on board immediately. You have others who sort of stayed back and weren't sure that the tablet device was going to deliver the same experience as it does in print, and how could you monetize that, and what's the right model to monetize an app on a tablet. So there were a lot of questions around that. And so I think we're still evolving the business model for the tablet devices, but even as we're still developing the business model, the whole sort of technology is changing, and OUP's digital strategy moving forward is not iPad-based. It will be based in HTML5, which, not being a developer, I can't really explain fully, but the one thing I know is that HTML5 displays on any device in the same manner, so it's device agnostic. So you can have the same experience whether you're sitting looking at your desktop, you're carrying a tablet, you're on your phone, it doesn't matter. And all of those things will mean great things for advertisers as well. Ads on abstract pages were something that we worked with the Infectious Diseases Society of America on earlier this year. And I have to say the response from advertisers was almost immediate. We had 4 new advertisers come to us and begin advertising on those pages. We increased impressions to such a level that they really felt it was a very worthwhile buy. It had meaning. It wasn't, buy 10,000 impressions and see what happens. It was buy hundreds of thousands of impressions and know that your campaign will be successful. And again, we got no negative feedback from users at all on those pages. Annals of Oncology was one of our first journals to introduce ads at the article level. They increased revenues by 30% in the first 6 months, no negative user feedback, and again, it's that random serving technology that means the society doesn't bear responsibility for where the ads are placed, and neither does the advertiser. They are just randomly served on pages as they're called up. So what's next for Oxford? Ongoing society education. Technology is changing very rapidly. Probably in the space of the 40 minutes that we've been on this call, something new has emerged, and some new digital product can be there for us to sell and put on a website or on a tablet. For Oxford, we want to expand a lot of our focus outside of medicine. We really believe that there is a lot of opportunity in the other disciplines in which we serve, particularly law and, believe it or not, music. We want to be able to create cross-journal buys so that all of our journals in cardiology can be banded together and sold in conjunction, whether it's US, UK, or it's some combined of rest of world plus US and geo-target within those different journals. Contextual and behavioral targeting. Boy, Jen, I think I want to take your whole strategy around that and just bring it right over here to Oxford. That is something we are absolutely focused on. And books and journal content combinations. For those of you who may be familiar with Oxford, you may know us as a book publisher first and perhaps a journal publisher second. We want to be able to take all of the like content between a book category and our journal categories and be able to sell across all of those different combinations with some semantic tagging. Thank you, Jen. That's all I've got, and I think I'm going to turn it back to Maria now for questions.
Great. Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Jennifer and Damon, for all of those insights. So now we've all heard basically 3 different perspectives today on digital media proliferation, and as you can probably tell from all of our presenters, there's so many things going on right now that it's almost hard to keep pace a little bit with all of the innovations taking place. This is the part of our session today that we want to open up for questions. So again, if you have a question you would like to ask one of our panelists, please go ahead and type it in the chat window and send that over to the organizers and panelists choice there. In the meantime, there are a couple of questions that have come in that I'd like to go ahead and pose to our panelists. And Damon, this first question is for you.
All right.
You had mentioned in your presentation the importance of gathering customer insights and knowing the audience. What advice would you have for a scholarly group maybe doing this for the first time? Are there any specific tools that you'd recommend, like a survey, for example, or are there also tools that you would not recommend?
There aren't any tools that I wouldn't recommend, and of course a lot of it depends upon your budget. But if you're talking about a digital survey, you can do that online through SurveyMonkey or any of those other sources, and you can put that up in 5 minutes and put it out to your membership or any subset or to whatever industry you partner with. So there are inexpensive ways like that to reach out. I personally prefer qualitative to quantitative, which would mean personal conversations or small focus groups. With your membership, that should be something that should be relatively straightforward and easy to set up. You can poll a small subset of your audience and request some of their time. If necessary, pay them a small honorarium. Industry is a little bit harder to get face time with, but if you do have any type of field force, they should have some existing relationships. And if not, you can send an email or get on the phone yourself. And I think a very straightforward message of we're trying to improve our product. We're trying to investment map where we develop our organization. Would love 10 minutes of your time to hear about your personal experience, what you've been doing, what works, what doesn't, what your performance indicators are, and what you'd like to see from us. And that's both a goodwill opportunity, a networking opportunity as well, and then finally the insights, when aggregated through the different modalities you can get information from, will help you make smart decisions about where to invest your dollars.
And so, Damon, just a quick follow-up question. How often do you recommend that a group undertake a survey or focus group or something like that? In other words, is the data that you gather from that good for a year? Should that be refreshed more often than annually? What would you recommend on timing?
It depends on what you're researching, but I would never say that research is something that is stagnated or static. I think that it's something that's ongoing. Particularly from my earlier part of my presentation, I was saying you should start small, fail small if you do fail, and then figure out what to do to win big. So even your small products or your small changes are opportunities to gather information and intelligence and aggregate it in some meaningful way. If you're looking for a rebranding of your journal or your website, that's going to require extensive research, and that might be a one-time thing. But if you have new editorial features online and you can put a few questions on your website with a widget or some other survey vehicle, that's an opportunity to get instantaneous feedback. Do you like these new features? Would you like to see more of them, or see what's read more than other things? So research and customer insight is a discipline into and of itself, but any stakeholder, whether it's an editor or a salesperson or a marketing person or ad ops, whatever, they all have their opportunity to touch people in certain ways at certain times, using digital, using the telephone, using email, to get what they need to inform the next set of questions. And from my perspective, that never stops.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Great advice. Thank you. This next question is for Jennifer. Now, you had mentioned the need for having a reliable, knowledgeable traffic manager, and I think you mentioned the need for a good operational staff to support all of the digital effort going on. It's a similar question that we asked Damon. What would you recommend to a group starting out with that? Are there tools, traffic ad management systems like AdJuggler that you would recommend, and what kind of training is really needed to get a traffic manager off to a good start with something like this?
Yeah, so if you're starting small and it's just a small part of your business and you're just sort of getting started, there are people who do this as freelance. It's something you can outsource. There are individual freelancer types, but there are also organizations that you can outsource this to. As your business grows and you start to bring it in-house, when you choose the vendor, meaning the ad server that you're going to work with, they offer really good training programs. Most of them have incredibly robust customer service programs, with hotlines and 1-800 and 24-hour support. So I would encourage all of you to take advantage of what your vendor offers. In our case, we use OAS, which is a 24/7 real media product, and they have really tremendous customer support. There's also the IAB, which is a huge and wonderful resource. Again, as I think I mentioned earlier, it tends to be a little bit consumer-focused, but again, there's a lot to learn from some of these bigger players. There's also AdMonsters. AdMonsters is, they offer some training. They have, some basic information available online. Their courses tend to be a little bit more expensive, but again, it sort of depends on where you are in the cycle or in the growth cycle of this digital product as to how much you may be able to invest. So I'm not sure, do others have other recommendations?
Okay, Jennifer, thank you for that.
Sure.
I don't have any other recommendations myself. Does anyone else before we move on? Amy, Damon, anything?
No, I think that's a fairly good summary, to look to external vendors. The good thing is, even if you don't use them, you should be taking demos from these vendors every chance that you can. And they understand the game. They know that not every demo is going to lead to a new client. But the more of these demos you do, they don't cost you anything other than some of your time. You get an understanding of what competitors are doing, what new and emerging technologies are, how people are targeting, what the costs are. So it's something that's in your pocket when you are ready to make that decision and you have a knowledge base to build from.
Okay. And I want to make sure that I ask a follow-up question again to what we just discussed, Jennifer. How did you execute the semantic tagging, and how did that process work?
Thankfully, I was not involved. That's a highly technical function. So we have a platform vendor that essentially did this for us. Unfortunately, I can't get into too much detail about it because I really don't know. But it was something that our new vendor was offering to us that our old vendor didn't. I think it's something that it's a growing field, and more platform vendors are offering semantic tagging. But again, I think it has enabled us to do what we've never been able to do before, and that's been a benefit on both the reader side and on the advertiser side. And in terms of digital revenue innovation, this has been on the advertiser side. Really, it introduced new products for us that has made new revenue streams possible. So unfortunately, I can't get into too much detail about it because I'm completely incapable technologically, but it is something that the vendor would do for you as a publisher.
Well, that's good advice that you and Damon have both mentioned, which is asking the vendors a lot of questions and using their expertise to hear what they would recommend. Next question for Amy. How do you increase the impressions on the abstract pages, and was this due to the advertisers driving traffic?
Great questions. We drive traffic to any page on our website through many different ways. We have a really strong marketing department, but one of the reasons we wanted advertising on those abstract pages is, I'm sure those of you on the phone know, most of the traffic driven to scholarly journals comes through Google, and Google usually takes you to the abstract page. So it was a matter of raising the ranking in Google. It was a matter of using other marketing efforts to drive the content, making some of the content free, for example, for either forever free or for a short period of time, through a series of press releases acknowledging that that content is free, promoting it through the societies themselves. There are myriad ways to drive traffic to any journal site. So I would say we do just about everything we can to make sure that the traffic is growing. And your second question, Maria, was?
The second part of that question from one of our audience members was, in relation to the abstract pages, was this due to advertisers driving traffic? Did advertisers play a role in driving traffic?
Advertisers can play a role in driving traffic to different parts of a site, but they don't necessarily drive it to a specific page. Does that make sense?
Okay. And if there's any follow-up questions, as we're going through and sharing these questions with our panelists, please just go ahead and send those to us in the chat box. And I know contact information for each of our panelists has been available today as well, and I'm sure that they would welcome a separate offline follow-up question today too if we don't get to everything. So I did have one more question for Amy, and this relates to mobile. How do you recommend that societies approach mobile ads? Should those be packaged in with other things, or are they presented as run of schedule? How do you recommend societies approach mobile?
Again, excellent question. I think mobile is important as a part of any digital campaign, and it's unusual for an advertiser's campaign to just have one digital methodology. So it's important to incorporate mobile, and all of our journals are mobile optimized, so we can offer advertising. Unfortunately, I will say that the usage on mobile for scholarly journals, at least in Oxford's experience, is not high. And advertisers are not willing to invest the additional dollars in mobile advertising until that usage increases. So they'd much rather, again, go to a known resource like a tablet device, like a web page or a website where they know there's going to be a lot of traffic, and spend their dollars there.
All right, Amy, if I can add on to that. I agree with you completely. The scale is just not there, and so there are a couple of different approaches that are emerging in mobile that I see. There are some commercial publishers that are mandating print and online be bundled together, and that includes mobile. So they're losing some print revenues, but they're making up more on the digital side. But what I see more people doing is offering limited sponsorship and promotional opportunities with mobile that are single or multi-sponsored that get more real estate and more disruptive types of promotional messaging within mobile. So if you're just selling impressions in a mobile environment, tablet or smartphone, whatever, you're not going to generate a lot of revenue. You're going to be working hard for a low yield. So a more successful model is to, if your society is willing to do that, is to partner with a small number for a higher ticket.
Okay. Well, thank you, Amy and Damon, for that information. We do have one last question, and this, I think, goes back to the conversation that Jennifer was having earlier about the traffic system, or sorry, a slide that you had in there, Jennifer. You, in your presentation, said you did not recommend click-through rate, yet that was what everyone was familiar with. Is there a metric that you would want to see people use instead of click-through rate?
That's a great question. So we use what's available to us, and we have some challenges in our analytics area, but time on site in terms of proving engagement, the number of page views per session or per visitor is another point for proving engagement. Obviously, the standard metrics of impressions, unique visits, unique visitors, page views. So for us, and I think this is something that Damon sort of pointed to, for us we have this constant tension between needing information about our online audience and not wanting to put up gates or barriers to our content for our readers. And I assume and I think that a lot of people in scholarly publishing probably struggle with this same issue. So, we want to put up more registration. We have made some progress in this area so that we do have better identification. But in the absence of really being able to do that to the extent that our advertisers would like, some of these other metrics I think probably could go a long way, like time on site and page views per visit.
All very good suggestions. So I want to thank Damon, Jennifer, and Amy for serving as panelists today. This brings us to the end of our Q&A session. And I just want to remind everyone that has attended today that you will be receiving an evaluation form. And we just really encourage you to complete that and get that back to us so that we can improve the content of future webinars. Your feedback is always important to us. I want to thank everyone that has attended today, and we look forward to having you join us for a future SST webinar. Thanks so much, and have a great day.